Okay, let's talk about one of the modes on the Draeger that's a little different, pressure control, pressure support, ventilation, okay, and what it does. So if you remember the video or the discussions we've had over how pressure support works and what its benefits are, you understand that pressure support is just pressure control ventilation, except the I time is a flow terminating I time and not a time frame. So really the only thing different between a pressure control breath and a pressure support breath, if the target numbers are the same, is a pressure control breath in general has a time frame that it's going to hold the pressure for, and until that time frame is reached, the patient's not going to exhale. And a pressure support breath is the time frame is governed by the flow termination or the waveform, and it's waiting for that flow to slow down to some percent number. And how we set it on the Draeger is 5%. And in that manner, every breath, the I time can actually fluctuate based on the compliance and the situation with the patient's system. And a patient somewhat can control how long that inspiratory time is given or that pressure is held for. So in this mode, pressure control, pressure support, ventilation, it has the capabilities of doing volume guarantee as well. So let's talk about how it's going to function without volume guarantee on first. So without volume guarantee on, you have a pressure, which is a peak inspiratory pressure in this mode. Remember, if you touch that knob, it says below it, it says peak inspiratory pressure. It does not say pressure support. So that's telling you that if I put 15 in there as a number, and I got a PEEP of 5, the peak inspiratory pressure is going to go to 15, which means if I was to say how much pressure support is the patient on, he's on 10, right? Because pressure support is how much pressure in addition to PEEP, where peak inspiratory pressure is how much total pressure is in the system. So if I set it to 15 here, the highest pressure is going to be 15, and you got a PEEP of 5. But then you have this rate set right here. So you have a set rate of 10 right now, right? But that rate is not like an SIMV rate. It's not a rate that's incorporated in the patient. And you can see there's no inspiratory time set here. So there's no time frame ever being applied in this mode. Every breath is essentially a pressure support breath. And the rate is a backup minimal rate. So you can see right now with this test lung, it's not breathing, right? Obviously. And you can see above, he's breathing a rate of 10. So even though he has no spontaneous effort, he's getting a minimal rate of 10 because that's what I have my rate set at, right? But when he gets the rate of 10, the inspiratory time is still being governed by the deceleration flow. So i.e. when we go to here and go to trigger, we can see our inspiratory termination setting is set at 5%. And that is governing even these breaths. Even as he sits here and doesn't breathe at all and rides the vent rate that you have, this I time is not set to a time frame. It's set to a flow termination, and that's what's governing how long this pressure is being held for. Okay, so let's say he starts to breathe. So now as I start manipulating the test lung, the patient's breathing now, has a spontaneous respiratory rate, and you see the color changed in the middle of the flow. It's indicating he's triggering this breath. But again, even though he's triggering, I can make the I time longer. See how the I time is now longer? And then it's short, and all that is being controlled by the flow termination of the patient himself or the system itself, right? Again, so now the patient's breathing in this, and we have, without volume guarantee on, we have a peak pressure of 15, which would be a pressure support of 10 and a PEEP of 5. And let's say he goes apneic. So now the patient goes apneic, doesn't breathe. You can see the vent is still doing nothing, right? And now, we have a minimum rate of 10. So he ventilates at the rate of 10, right? But you can see the vent is not alarming apnea, right? It's not telling anybody that this is happening. There's no alarms going off, at least pertaining to that rate. So I can set like my low minute volume alarm that would alarm if I didn't want, or if I wanted to be notified that this was occurring, or I can set it where I don't get notified. And that's where this mode kind of comes into the mode you would choose versus just regular CPAP pressure support with the apnea backup settings. If you're in this mode, you're in CPAP pressure support, But you're saying, I want the patient to get this minimum rate of 10, and I am aware that he could stop breathing and ride this vent. And everybody knows it, and we don't need to have an alarm go off to tell us, because we all understand that that's possible. This would be like a kid in the NICU that has intermittent apnea for prematurity. We know he's going to go apneic. When he's not apneic, he needs to have this fluctuating I time that you get from CPAP pressure support, but we also need to have a rate, and we don't really need to know about it because we know it's going to happen. This is a perfect mode for that kid, right? We wouldn't set it at 10, obviously, but we would set it at whatever minimum rate required that kid requires. Let's say 33, 40, whatever. And now this is going to maintain him. It's not going to alarm, right? So that's the premise of this mode, is that we want to be in CPAP pressure support, but we know he's going to be apneic. So we're going to set a backup rate that he's going to be ventilating when he does. And then as he starts, if he does breathe again, he can breathe it. And he allows that most perfect mode of ventilation, which is pressure support. Okay. Now in this mode, we offer volume guarantee, which everybody understands. Volume guarantee is now saying, hey, I want to be in CPAP pressure support, but I want the pressure not to be a fixed pressure support of 10. I want it to be whatever is needed to get that volume in and out of that kid. So now we say, hey, I want 100 cc's. That's what I want this volume to be moved minimally. So the patient, if he just sits there and doesn't breathe, he gets that backup rate that we had set in there of 33 right now. We have the 100, which also indicates volume guarantee is on up here in the corner. But we have 100 cc as a target, and the peak pressure now, instead of being fixed at 15 like it was with volume guarantee off, it's going to be whatever pressure is needed for the inspiratory volume to be 100. So now we're in this mode. If he goes apneic, we know he goes apneic. We don't need to know about it. And we also need to have the vent look at what pressure do we need on each breath to guarantee that per kilo volume that we want on that kid. This is what they're going to do in NICU, is this pressure control, pressure support, volume guaranteed, with a volume probably in the 5 per kilo range. Okay. Also remember, this is always set at 5%. Unless we get that one specific waveform, and that's going to have us pull it off and start ramping that up. That's another conversation. But that, in general, that's your pressure control, pressure support mode.